a presenter is thinking about a title, there's lots of really good words that come through your mind. So, you could replace collaborative organizational results with achieving excellence or greater productivity or helping to manage change. I think all of these are very pertinent when it comes to creating cultural capital. So just an introduction for today. Okay, I've got a... All right, just a little bit of an intro to myself for those who don't know me. I started my career as an IT information management pre-sales consultant. And what that was is I was a techie that the sales reps used to drag around to client calls because clients sometimes didn't always believe what the sales reps were saying, and they needed sort of the technical expert who knew what the products could do and what they were all about. And I worked for two major IT firms, and I was able to be involved in some very large transformations that took place. What I learned was that for transformation to be successful, those projects that were successful paid a lot of attention up front to people management and the impact that those transformations were going to have on the people. And so I learned very early on that working with people effectively would be very important. Also in this role, sometimes it felt like a war zone because I was working between two cultures within organizations, the IT culture and the business users. And as you know, they both have different languages, different ways of being, different ways of working, and so I had to learn skills in working with both sort of sides of the transaction. Now, I got into organizational development and facilitation because I had to do project communications, and the first facilitation course that I took really helped me appreciate how facilitation could help bridge the communication gaps and really help build that cohesiveness that was required for project to be successful. And over the past 12 years, I've been doing a lot of work in leadership development, facilitating training. In the last couple of years, I've gotten into cultural transformation because of the impact that culture actually has on the success of projects. So what am I passionate about? Well, people and relationships, helping my clients achieve their results, good inclusive process, and teamwork. These are all really important to me. For me, there's nothing like a good design that brings out the wisdom of the group and brings the team together to build consensus. My belief is that so much more can be achieved when people work collaboratively together and there's this sense of connectedness. So what I heard from you before the webinar in preparation, well, as you know, the Government of Canada is going through some very big changes. The workforce is being reduced. Programs and budgets are being cut significantly. The rate of change is constant and it's getting faster and faster. There's a disconnect between people due to reengineering and change. And there's this constant demand for greater performance. The value of transforming culture, well, the impact that it has is the level of communication and cooperation it can create, the collaboration and interconnectedness to solve complex problems, the engagement, the increase of engagement that can happen, the sense of belongingness that it can create, and the level of commitment that it can generate. And the importance of culture, that if you don't address culture, how it can make or break the implementation of new strategies. Now, the way this webinar is going to work, there is one point where I'm going to be asking, leading you through some processes. And, I want you to feel free to participate. Nobody will know who you are, but certainly it would be good to hear from you if you do feel like sharing your ideas. On the panel to your right, there is a hand. Right now you're muted, but when you do want to speak, simply click on the hand and we'll see that, and we'll see that you're willing to share. Or you can enter your comments into the chat box. Okay, so you've got a couple of different ways of participating. So the workshop objectives. Well, first of all, it's recognizing that culture is a corporate asset, right? And so how do you create a culture that will attract, engage, and retain the highest performance, and really make work meaningful? Because today, especially the younger generation, they are looking for meaningful work. It's not so much how much they're being paid, but how much do they enjoy the job and how much do they enjoy the actual work environment. And second of all, we're going to be looking at a few tools that will help you identify what's important to people and also measuring the intangibles, such as values and behaviors, because culture really is about the intangibles. And if you are a manager or a leader, you need to see data. You need to make the intangible tangible. And then also, it's about demonstrating to you the value and the importance of human values in the workplace and how you can use personal values to actually increase performance. So looking inwards instead of outwards. So core business challenges today. When organizations go through change, right, what this usually means is if you're changing the way people are working, it might mean retraining on the job. For a lot of people, it means finding new positions. And for a lot of people also, especially what's happening today in Ottawa, it means the loss of a job. So when people go through transitions like this, they often feel a sense of fear, anxiety, depression. And when you have these feelings, clearly it's going to impact your mental state, which has a direct impact on your productivity and your performance. So how do you keep your people engaged during this process? How do you help them stay connected mentally and emotionally to the objectives that you have? How do you help them continue doing their best? Being creative, being innovative, solving problems, and delivering excellent client service. And also today, more than ever before, we are more socially conscious. So this means we need to manage these changes in a way that is caring and empathetic, that we're doing the right thing for people and doing it in the right way. Now, achieving high performance. When I was preparing for this webinar, I was going through a wonderful book called The Tao Te Ching of Leadership. And there was one thing there that really struck a chord in me, and that is all power and effectiveness come from knowing the how and then acting appropriately, right? So, as leaders, we have a lot of power, and we want to use that power in the most effective way. So it's about knowing how, what's most important to people, and then acting, doing the right thing. So the first thing is around measurement, okay? So we need to become aware of what really matters to people. What values exist in the current culture that are providing positive energy to people, and also what's happening, what behaviors are actually draining energy. And we need to know what the people are experiencing. And measurement matters, right? If you can measure it, you can manage it. And to monitor progress, you need to take a baseline measurement and measure your progress going forward. Culture normally takes about 5 to 10 years to transform, right? It's a slow process. So you need to be able to see what's working year in and year out for continuous learning and for organizational development, okay? In the past, we weren't able to do this because we didn't have tools to measure culture. But today, some of the tools I'll be showing you do help you to measure that. Also, it's around engagement, right? To be fully committed, you need people to have both their head and their heart involved in showing up at work, right? People are most effective when all their strengths and values can show up and be present at work. If people have to drop some of their values and leave them at the front door of the organization, they're going to be schizophrenic and they aren't going to be reaching their full potential. And as a leader or a manager, you want people to be there 100%. The next thing is alignment, right? High performance comes from cohesive action where everybody is working collaboratively and collectively. Now you need alignment of personal values, you need alignment of organizational values, you need alignment of organizational structures and systems, and the mission for cultural transformation. It's a complex process, and this is why there needs to be conscious leadership to be able to create conscious cultural transformation. So we're in a new operating reality. Today, we are riding through the greatest period of change since the Industrial Revolution. You know, change is constant. It's getting faster and faster, and we have no choice. Business has no choice but to keep up pace with these technological changes. If they don't, they'll die as a business, right? Risk and uncertainty are increasing. I mean, many people are losing their jobs. Terrorism is changing how and where we travel in the world. Global warming is significantly changing life in the north. I mean, changes are happening all over the place. More and more ethics and public opinion are influencing how decisions are made around the boardroom table. Complexity is increasing and interdependency is increasing. You know, how we work together in our organizations, how we work with partners outside the organization, right? No one person in an organization knows it all any longer. And one of the reasons for this, believe it or not, believe this statistic, information is doubling now every 11 hours. So there's no way that any one person can keep pace with it. So the problems we're experiencing today are so complex, we need to work collaboratively to solve these problems. Now, reaching back to our history, you know, Einstein once said that, you know, you can't solve the significant problems of today with the same level of thinking that created them. Basically, what he's saying is that we need new consciousness. We need new awareness, new ways of thinking, right? So how do we open our minds? How do we shift mindsets? How do we increase awareness and create new consciousness so that we can see things differently and come up with new strategies to solve the challenges that we're facing today? Now, another thing that's happening with all these changes, you know, there's a lot of stress happening outside organization, and this has an impact clearly on inside the organization. And the stressors that you were talking about, they create unresourceful states, right? Fear, anxiety, anger, defensiveness, resentfulness, all of these things clearly impact your mental state and your performance. And what's also happening here in Canada, in particular, burnout is on the rise. You're constantly hearing about people taking sick leave due to stress. The levels of stress and violence and disease are increasing daily. And in Canada, the Mental Health Association has come out with this statistic that the cost of mental health organization is 12% of the bottom line. So clearly, there's a huge financial benefit to providing programs to reduce stress in the individual and on the organization. So the evolution of business paradigms, where are we coming from? Well, if we need a new consciousness to learn how to reduce stress and solve our complex problems, right? Well, we've come from the age of the manpower, where, you know, manual labor was the base of the economy. We've moved through the industrial age, where we became mechanized, you know, which changed what we were producing and how we were producing it, a mass production of products, and really the beginning of the consumer society. And in our lifetime, most of us have been knowledge workers, right? Where intellectual capital was the greatest value. You know, every parent wanted their child to get a good education and a university degree. Well, guess what? Times are changing again. New professions are now starting up. Past 10 years, you've seen more and more professional coaches. Facilitation, right, is emerging. You know, more and more people are investing in personal development, personal transformation. Yogas, spas, retreats are now a huge billion-dollar business. So there's a real shift from the left brain analytical thinking, sort of in the age of information, to the right brain, more emotional, intuitive thinking in the age of what we call the age of consciousness, believe it or not. And you can take this word consciousness and substitute it with awareness, if that makes you feel more comfortable. Because I've heard from people that consciousness is not a term that's used in business, but certainly we need to become more aware. What's also happening right now is baby boomers, they're heading towards retirement. They're reflecting more on their lives, and this is, again, driving change in society. You have the grandparent phenomenon, which is driving a change in societal values as well, producing a kinder, gentler society. And, of course, you've got the younger generation. They're coming into the workforce. and they want to change. You know, they've got different values and behaviors from the older generation. We're actually now calling them the C generation, which stands for connected. You know, and they are in tension with the values of the older generation. They want a different, more collaborative working culture, right? They want participation in the decision-making processes, and they want work-life balance. So how we do things in an organization is the new cultural capital. It's the new competitive advantage for organizations. So, you know, if you were to define culture, it's really the way things are done in an organization. It's like the collective personality of the people and the leadership who work there. So it's your values and behavior that form your personality, and they determine how and why you do things. So, you know, you have to ask yourself, are you a people-centric organization? Is there a lot of attention given to relationships and service to others? Right? Or are you more of a sales organization driven by results? Are you planning and research, so working autonomously is more how things are done? You know? Or are you collaborative? Do you enjoy working in teams and making decisions by consensus? You know, how you work together motivates people, and it attracts people to want to work with you, right? If you're not fulfilling the promise and providing them a meaningful experience, you're going to have a hard time retaining the younger generation. So a lot has to do with how the organization lives its values and behaviors, and the culture is all about how things are done. Now, if you want to consciously increase the value of your culture as a corporate asset to attract and retain the best people, you're going to need to measure it and understand it so you can manage it. The purpose behind measurement is to find out what really matters to your people. It develops awareness and understanding of why people behave the way they do and what's motivating them, right? If you know how, then you can manage it effectively. For example, if I know that caring for others is really important, is a really important value to you, then when I go to speak to you about a project, I will have greater influence and a stronger connection if I speak to you about the project in those terms, right? Also, if you do reach out and want to find out from your people what matters most to them, it will make a huge difference. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Culture and brand. A lot of talk about brand these days, and the reality is it's directly connected to your culture, your internal way of being. And culture is about your values, your beliefs, and your behaviors. So from an employee perspective, culture is internal. It's how and why you do things. Externally, from a client perspective, it's your brand. So who you are on the inside looks a lot like who you are on the outside. And if, you know, the question you need to ask yourself, are you consciously creating your culture, managing it, investing in it, or do you have a default unconscious culture? And if culture is now a corporate asset, how effectively are you managing it so that it benefits you in all the new strategies that you're implementing? So as a corporate asset, there's a value chain to culture. And values, your values as a leader, your values as an organization, they drive the culture. Culture drives employee engagement. You know, your culture determines how well you motivate your staff. How well your staff are motivated will be reflected in the quality of service they give to clients and the clients receive. How well the clients are engaged will determine their level of satisfaction, and the level of satisfaction will drive stakeholder value or profitability of the company. So what are the key influencers today in corporate strategy development? Well, a lot of it is using reason and logic, right? Most strategies are developed using the intellect. And the value of a holistic approach, you know, considering the culture, is not a common approach. when you see an iceberg, what thoughts come to mind? Any thought about the Titanic, the unsinkable ship? Well, what sunk the Titanic was not above the surface, it was below, right? So when it comes to developing corporate strategy, it's really important to include how you are going to measure and manage your culture. Right? What are the values, beliefs, feelings, attitudes that need to be addressed and changed? What emotions need to be recognized based on the changes you're going to be going through? It's often what people are feeling that causes stress and engagement issues, and it needs to be well managed with effective strategies developed collectively for maximum buy-in and consensus. Culture eats corporate strategy for breakfast. Did you know that 9 out of 10 strategic implementations fail? And why do they fail? Because the culture of the organization has not been addressed. What are the cultural issues that need to be changed? A lot of organizations say, we need to work more together. If we have 15 strategic initiatives, and sometimes I've heard 50, and sometimes I've heard 60, believe it or not, how are we going to work more collectively together? And quite often they never actually address the how, right? They're just thinking with their head. So one of the tools that I use very effectively with teams is called the Strength Deployment Inventory, and it's based on relationship awareness theory. Okay, the theory is all about identifying the values that motivate people when things are going well and when they're in conflict. Okay, when you understand yourself better and those values and strengths that are important to you and drive your behavior, you're much more effective at knowing how to act appropriately and to achieve high performance. So as you develop greater awareness of yourself and the other people on your team, as a manager, you're much more effective at reducing conflict, at keeping your people, reducing turnover, and also improving your communication skills. And when I know what's important to my team members, what values really motivate them and drive them and give them that sense of self-worth, then I'm able to inspire them based on recognizing their values and giving them work that is more in line with their values of what makes them feel good and gives them that sense of self-worth. Okay? Another thing that's really important about recognizing the strengths and personal values is that not just in myself, but when I see what's important to other people, I can actually take off my glasses. Let's say I'm a person that's, really driven by results, right? Well, I may have a perception of somebody else who's driven by relationships and feelings. I may not appreciate them. I may see them as touchy-feely. I mean, I get that all the time, right? And so if I can take off my glasses and recognize what's important to another person, put on their glasses, I can see the world from a whole new perspective. And that really can change the whole dynamics of a team, but also an organization, and give me a new view of coming up with new strategies and new ways of doing things. It also helps me to be a much more effective communicator and making sure that my communications touch on the points that are important to other people with different value sets. So from a universal motivation perspective, every person wants to achieve a sense of self-worth, right? And self-worth can come from being valued by yourself, and also, very important to note, being valued by others, such as your manager, for the things that are of value to you. So for example, if I'm a person who is really motivated by teamwork, okay, then if my manager comes by and says, Joanna, that was great teamwork, really, thank you for what you did because it helped the other team members. You know what? I'm going to feel, it's going to pick up my spirit, it's going to make me feel good because that's a value that gives me a sense of self-worth, right? And so inspiration that comes from within is much more effective and less costly than external reward systems. So if you can figure out what are those values that will enliven your people and enliven the organization, that is a much cheaper and more effective way than coming up with reward systems. Passion and potential. So here is a part in the webinar that I would like you to think for yourself answers to some of these questions. Okay? So the first one is, I want you to close your eyes and take a deep breath. Right? And I want you to remember a time when you were really passionate about the work that you were doing. Now this could have been something at work, it could have been something you were doing at home for your spouse or your kids, or it could have been for a volunteer organization, but something that you were most passionate about. Okay? Now, what are you feeling? How would you describe this state of being? Now, if anybody's got a word that they can put to it, raise your hand, because I'd like to hear from you. Anybody? Okay, there are a few people typing, so we're just going to see if something comes up. Pride. Pride. Yeah. Well, what I've heard from people is people feel more positive, they feel dynamic, they feel happy, joyful, connected. And then the next question is, how does this passion, how do these feelings impact performance? Right? What I've heard from people is that it increases their performance, right? For example, teamwork for me, as I mentioned, is a personal value that gives me energy. I will work overtime. I work as a volunteer coordinator for a national foundation. I'm doing this in my spare time at night, right? Nobody's paying me to do it, but I've got that extra energy because of the feeling that it gives me when I'm living those values. So that's the passion. That's the power of passion, if you can connect to it in an organization. The next thing is your potential. So now I want you to think about a time when you were experiencing your full potential, right? All gears, all your cylinders were fully loaded. Right? What was your state of mind? Think about that. What was your state of mind when your full potential was being activated? Well, what I've heard from people, right, is that they feel expanded. Right? Their sense of being is expanded. Their mind is very calm and clear. They're more creative. They're more innovative. They're more resourceful. And what you have to recognize here is that your ability times your mental state can increase your potential. So if your mental state is being impacted by stress, right, it's going to have a huge impact on your performance. So when people are passionate about their work, there's this dynamic energy and an emotional connection to the task that improves performance. Okay? When people are experiencing their full potential, they are in a resourceful state of mind. Having a calm, clear, focused mind enables you to think more clearly. Right? It enables you to understand, be more creative in solving problems. If your people are stressed by what's happening around them, this is going to negatively impact their state of mind and intellectual potential. So giving people skills to reduce stress and change their state of mind will help to improve performance. Also, identifying the values and behaviors in the workplace that are causing stress, right, and draining energy will help leaders to develop strategies to transform the culture. To have full engagement, you want people to be both emotionally and intellectually connected to the outcomes. Okay? This will give you the greatest commitment to help keep the momentum moving forward during difficult times. Now, the TLEX program. TLEX stands for Transformational Leadership for Excellence. This is a program that has been delivered around the world, right, to thousands of business professionals. And what it does is it enhances energy, it enhances clarity of mind and creativity, right? And all at the same time, it fosters strong collaboration and team dynamics with a commitment to excellence. Okay? And this lays the foundation for organizational success. So the benefits of doing this program, right, are greater relaxation and reduction in stress, both mentally and physically. Right? It increases energy levels, improves the clarity of mind, gives a greater sense of team connectedness, and a new leadership paradigm. If you want to find out more about the TLEX program, there's a website that you can go to, and it's listed in the resources. Okay? But certainly it's something that I highly recommend because I have been involved with it for many years. Now this is an example, this is an exercise that you can do. We're going to do part of it today, but I also invite you to do it with your teams. And it's all about, the purpose of this exercise is to give you an experience of your personal values, okay, and the importance of them. So when it's done in a team setting, team members develop a valuable self-awareness and insights about each other, and it also creates a greater sense of connectedness and understanding that will inspire each team member to higher levels of performance. So this is what I'd like you to do. Choose just one value right now. And, you know, in the workbooks that I sent out to you, there was the page after this one lists all the different possible values that, you know, some examples of values. But each person on the webinar today, pick one value that's really important to you in your life, okay? And write that down. For example, I've written open communication is important to me. So pick one value that's important to you. Pick the one that comes first into your mind. Now, second of all, I want you to write down, what is your belief behind this value? So examples for me, open communication was my value. My belief is, you know, I believe everybody has wisdom. I believe we need everybody's wisdom for the wisest result. Okay? But let's say you picked respect. Well, what is your belief behind respect? And write down at least 3 or 4 points. What's your belief behind that value? And I'm going to give you a minute to do this exercise, because this is an exercise for developing a greater self-awareness. Okay, now, if you've written down your beliefs, I want you to answer the third question. What are the behaviors that you exhibit relative to this value? So for me, I work with clients, and it's really important to build consensus before making decisions. I love facilitating discussions. You know, I invite the people who are impacted or who will be impacted by decisions to the meeting. So what are some behaviors that you exhibit relative to your behavior, your value that you've chosen? Okay, now, is there anybody out there in our audience who would like to share their value, the belief they've identified for that value, and their behaviors? And if anybody is daring, I would really appreciate it. I know there's people out there. No takers? Okay, we're going to move forward, right? So the objective of doing this, right, is to demonstrate the connection of your values to engagement, retention, and high performance. Right? Because everybody wants people to be fully engaged. It costs a lot of money when people leave organizations and you can't retain them. So first question, how do you feel when you're able to live your values at work? Think about this, right? We went through the exercise of, passion and potential. When people are engaged and they're able to live their values, there is more engagement, there's more energy, there's more joy, there's higher performance. The impact on performance is it increases it. It increases people's productivity. They'll go above and beyond to live their values and feel appreciated for their values. Now here's an important question. What would happen if you were not able to bring these values at work? How would you feel? Okay? If you could not live that one value that you wrote down, if you could not live that or experience it at your work, right, would you want to continue working there? Every single person I have asked in every single presentation to a person have said they would no longer want to work at that place within that organization. So you can see there's a direct connection to your personal values, your performance, your engagement, and retention. So that's why I'm saying it's an incredibly powerful exercise to lead your teams through. I invite you to try this exercise with 2 or 3 of your colleagues and see what kind of impact it has on your team dynamics when you focus on their values and you intentionally live them. So what I've discovered in the process of putting this webinar together is that your valued relating style, so your values actually generate a life force energy within you. If I'm feeling down at home and I'm feeling a little low, the only thing I need to do to pick me up is to actually start doing something for my family members. It actually gives me energy, That can happen in the workplace as well. This life force energy gives you a sense of self-worth, right? When you are experiencing self-worth, it increases your positive mental attitude, right? Positive mental attitude times your ability, right, is equal to performance. And the fundamental law of individual success is positive attitude times ability equals performance. So if you have a positive mental state of 100%, guess what? You're going to get great performance. But any reduction in your mental state is automatically going to reduce your level of performance. So that mental state, bring it all the way back to your personal values, can have a huge impact on the organization and organizational results. I'd like to give you an example of cultural capital, how the most successful organizations, okay, are focusing on their culture, and actually we call it share of heart, because what they're doing, okay, is they're actually investing in their culture. The book is called Firms of Endearment, and it's noted in the resources at the end of the webinar. Firms of Endearment, okay, are organizations that have over the last, they've been measured over the last 3, 5, and 10 years. They are 1,026% more profitable than the S&P 500. They are 3 times more profitable than good to great companies, right? How are they doing it? Right? The way that they're doing it is they are actually endearing themselves to all of their stakeholders, right? So companies such as Google, IKEA, Starbucks, Amazon, Honda, Southwest, BMW, IKEA, Timberland, Caterpillar, these are all organizations that people not just like, but they love, right? And what's happening is that terms of endearment such as love, joy, empathy, compassion, passion are now being used around the boardroom table and being used very comfortably. Why? Because loyalty, right, which is what everybody wants in their clients, is rooted in emotion and not reason. So that emotional connection to your stakeholders, right, creating happy, fulfilled, creative, inspired employees who are less stressed, are the most productive. They're much better at solving problems because of their mental state. They're offering higher quality client experiences. Clients will pay extra for a positive experience. And these employees are empowered to ensure the clients leave happy. I'll give you an example. I happen to love Starbucks for many reasons. One of them is I know there's a percentage of the dollar that I spend, actually $5 that I spend on a chai latte. I know that it goes to help farmers stay on their farms down in South America. But here's an example. One Friday afternoon, I went to the local Starbucks and the lineup was out the door. But I waited because I'm addicted to my Starbucks. And when I got up to the counter, the client in front of me handed the barista a certificate for a free drink. I went, oh, that's nice. When it came my turn, he said, what would you like? And I said, I'd like what he had. And guess what? I got it. Another time, another Starbucks, I asked for soya in my drink. And the barista said, you know what? Soya actually doesn't cost any more, so I'm not going to charge you the extra 60 cents that we normally charge. Well, guess what? Guess which Starbucks I go to now for my chai latte, right? I know this sounds trite, but the reality is it's how they make their clients feel that's so important. So what they're doing, how do these companies behave? Well, the first thing is they're earning a share of heart of their customers, so customers gladly offer a share of their wallet. Employees give back with greater productivity. There's an emotional bond with their suppliers, so they give you superior offerings. And communities, they have reason to feel pride in your presence, and so you can enjoy an abundant source of customers and employees, right? So it's earning that share of heart. Another thing they do is they invest in their culture. Southwest Airlines, the most successful airline in history, has a 96-person culture committee, right? Then next is the wow factor in their culture. They do things that wow their employees. I'll give you an example. Google, right? Google feeds gourmet food around the clock, provides free gourmet food around the clock to their employees. Now, not all organizations can do this, but what is it that you can do that creates a wow for your employees? Next thing is the vision of their leaders is the highest. When they think about creating their visions, their idea is at the highest level of how can we serve society? How can we give back? With that in mind, they also have, effective management processes underneath this highest value. But they're thinking about, what they're doing is grounded in ethics and morals. And they're thinking about humanism as opposed to capitalism. And the final thing is there's alignment of all stakeholder needs, right? It's about stakeholder relationship management, not just investor relationship management, right? They have a dedication to the well-being of all their stakeholders, and they treat them all very well, right? They want all their stakeholders to thrive. No group is better than any other, because they believe that, life depends on the whole being healthy, right? And, they can do things such as paying high wages and charging low prices and getting high profitability because their marketing costs are lower and their training costs are lower because they don't have retention issues. Right? I'll give you a client example that I worked with recently. It's the Pet Industry Association of Canada. And they invited me to do a strategic plan last year. During this planning process, what I was hearing from them was a lot of limiting beliefs. caused by comments and what they were receiving from animal rights groups. You know, the impression that, you know, that the pet industry was making money off the backs of animals. But the reality is, you know, without pet stores, where are people going to go buy pet food, right? I mean, the reality is they have to exist. And what I heard in working with them was that they're in the business because they love animals. They're all about animal rights and animal welfare. But that was not being projected either in their mission, vision, or on their website or anything that they were doing. So I said, you know, let's find out from your stakeholders. You know, after the strategic planning process, I said, you know, would you like to, it sounds like there's some cultural issues here that might need to be changed. And they said yes. And so the executive director agreed to build a case for change. And in building that case for change, what we did was we conducted 6 one-hour stakeholder consultations on the phone, minimal expense, but huge impact on the executive director and the board. And what it did was it shifted their mindset and changed the way they valued themselves. And then recently what I did was I contacted them to say, you know, how are things going? You know, they had changed their strategies in terms of how they were going to be working with the different stakeholder groups. And I heard the most wonderful thing. He said, you know, we've got a new strategy. We're going to give back. We're going to show how much we care by giving away our educational program in animal husbandry. And this is a program that they have been, you know, implementing over the last 5 years, well respected. And in giving it away, what it does is it actually improves the lives of animals. It's going to attract more positive attention to the association and mission. People will want to become members to support the good cause. So this, you know, helps to support their aim of growing from 600 to 6,000, right? And they believe that they will earn more from new members than they ever did selling the education. Their market and brand potential is going to increase when they give it away rather than selling it, right? And this is the way of the future. You know, people are giving back in order to receive more, and it's a universal law. Given you shall receive, and quite often you get more than what you asked for. And it's the way communities of practice work most effectively in organizations. Now, another set of tools that are very effective at measuring and identifying the values that are important to people in an organization are the cultural values assessment, and their tools from the Barrett Values Center, okay? Very powerful metrics that help leaders to identify the important values and to measure them year in, year out for continuous improvement, right? They make the intangible tangible, and they link performance to culture. Another values assessment that's extremely powerful and very helpful is called the Leadership Values Assessment. And what this does is it helps leaders assess how they are leading the organization. You know, if an organization says we need collaboration, we need to be working more effectively together, well, this values assessment will tell the leader how they are behaving. Are they walking the talk in order to model collaboration? Okay? So it really helps build effective leadership skills. Now, it's a very simple tool. It takes about 15 minutes for people to complete. It can be used online from like as few people as 5 to as many as 30,000. And 3 simple questions are asked. Which of the following values and behaviors most represent who you are? So as a person, as an individual, you're asked, you know, identify 10 values out of a list of 100. And that list of 100 can be modified to suit your organization. And as an individual, I pick the values that are important to me. Right? Second question is, which of the following values and behaviors most represent how your organization operates? And so this identifies what are the positive values that are supporting you, and also it identifies the entropy or the limiting values that are actually draining energy, causing stress, causing frustration, reducing the productivity in your organization. Okay? The third question it asks is, which of the following values and behaviors most represent how you would like your organization to operate? And again, you get to pick 10 out of a list of 100. And the importance of this third question is it actually is the antidote. It is the way forward. It's what people want to be experiencing. And what you want between all these three is as many matches as possible, because the more my values show up in the current culture, the more empowered, the more engaged, the more higher performing and higher productive I will be. So those values are then mapped on seven levels of organizational development, okay? And you will notice there's a connection here to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The first four, survival, relationship, self-esteem, and transformation, are exactly the same. What this model has done is it's taken the fifth level, which was self-actualization, and expanded it into three, because what we want to have happening in society and in business is people expanding into these higher levels of self-actualization. Why? Because when it comes from within, when people are inspired from within, they're much more productive and higher performing, and they have a greater impact on the organization, on their team, and on society. So this is what it would look like. Let's say we had an organization of 100 people, right? What it does is this is a rating of the current values. So what the employees had to say about their current culture. What are the most significant, statistically significant 10 values? The black are the values that they are experiencing. And these are typically the positive values, right? And then what is also identified are the potentially limiting values. Right? You'll notice number 3 is control, and we put an L beside it, and we call it potentially limiting value because let's say this was a financial organization. Well, guess what? Control maybe is a good thing in a financial organization. So the power of this tool is it gives you the data very easily, very quickly, and very cheaply. It gives you the data to have the conversations, because the way organizational change happens is one conversation at a time, right? And you have conversations based on their data. It's not us and them, it's we, it's our data. This is what we had to say. And then you can find out more, you can clarify and find out, well, what's really going on, right? And it comes with, the reports come with several different statistics, and one of them is your entropy percentage. And entropy is that percentage of energy that's not available for work because of stress or frustration. Okay, so let's say these limiting values, it takes that percentage from the number of limiting values that people have identified. So and what you want to have is a small percentage, right? Because when you have a low percentage of entropy, that means you've got higher employee engagement, right? And we all want the highest engagement possible. Right? If I let's say I was at the worst, which is 21%, the reason why that's important is because 21% of what I am paying in employee salaries it goes down the drain. It's not even showing up at work, right? And the developer of these tools was actually the director at the World Bank of Values and Ethics. Started his career as an engineer. And so in 1999, he left the World Bank to develop these tools. And since then, over the last 13 years, he has implemented them in over 1,500 companies around the world, right? Many banks, obviously, care about the bottom line. So they've been well tested, and they give a ton of information that can, help give you really deep, meaningful conversations. Here's an example of the use of the tools with a client service committee in a large Government of Canada department. Okay, so you see on the left-hand side, the personal values of this committee, and these were director generals. Okay, these were almost the highest level leaders within the committee, and I was asked to use this tool with the committee because of the level of engagement the leader of the committee was not getting. Okay, yes, they were achieving results, but the directors generals weren't showing up at the meeting. They were sending their directors. The directors were sending their managers, and it was just having a negative impact on the dynamics of the group. So before actually doing the assessment, I met with each of them to find out what was really going on. And one of the things that I intuited was that they viewed it as a committee and not really as a leadership team. But the importance of the work that they were doing, they were responsible for transforming the culture of the organization. And this was an organization that had a 50% client service rating. 50%. So clearly, client service excellence was something that they needed to improve. So they needed to work hard on it. And yet this committee didn't see themselves as a leadership team. Now have a look at the left-hand side. You can see that leadership was something that for them was an important personal value, right? Now look in the current values. It doesn't show up there, does it? And it does show up in the right-hand side, the desired culture values. So they wanted to see themselves as leaders. And so that was one area that was enlightening for them. Now, you will see achievement and respect. They're in the blue, right? You see that shows up in the current culture, achievement and respect, which was true. They were achieving what they set out to do. And so, but you will notice that there are 8 other values that did not show up in their current culture. And those particular values had nothing to do with reason and intellect. They were all emotional, you know? They were all connected to why they were not engaged. So results after working with this team, we had a new look at their vision and mission in terms of mandate, and sure enough, in their terms of reference, leadership didn't show up once. Well, after doing their mission and vision, guess what? Leadership showed up a whole bunch, and they identified the values that they wanted, which were leadership, clarity, commitment, mission focus, and excellence. And along with those values, we identified behaviors. What were specific behaviors they needed to see, and they were asked to identify behaviors that could be measured, because performance management is all about measurement and being able to see and measure what's happening, you know, on a month by month, meeting by meeting, however often you measure your results. Here is another example of a bank, okay? And you notice at the bottom of the screen, entropy at the beginning was 25%, fairly high and quite significant. You notice above that there were only 3 matches between personal values and in their current culture, which is fairly low. At the end of 5 years, entropy went down to 13%, and they had 6 matches between individual values and current culture, okay, which is good. And you will notice if you have a look as the years progressed, employee recognition shows up at number 8, okay, which is fairly significant in terms of change going through the current cultural evolution. So these are just some examples of using these tools. Now, new series on organizational success, especially when it comes to cultural transformation, that transformation begins with the personal transformation of the leaders. Organizations don't transform, people do, okay? Why is this so important? Well, leadership, you know, there are leaders everywhere within an organization, at every level within the organization. But the important thing about leadership is that they model the behaviors and the values that are taking place within the organization. And if the leaders don't change what they value, and if they don't change their mindset and beliefs, then their behaviors probably won't change either. In other words, you know, if they say that collaboration is what's required to be able to work more effectively together, but if that leader is very used to working autonomously and doesn't shift and become more collaborative, do you really think that the rest of the organization is going to become collaborative? I don't think so, right? If work-life balance is an important value, but the leader goes home at 7 o'clock at night with a full briefcase, what's the message that that leader is sending to the staff within the organization, right? So the values and the behaviors of the leaders are incredibly important. And what Richard Barrett has found over the last 13 years of doing this work, you know, around the globe, is that if leaders aren't aware and aren't prepared to change, then you might not even as well begin the cultural transformation, because it will not take. Okay? So integrated transformation, what's it all about? And this is what it looks like, okay? There's an internal perspective, which is your values, which, you know, what's underneath the covers, what people don't see, but is incredibly important. And then there's the external, which is the behaviors. So from a personal alignment perspective, your values need to be aligned with your behaviors. And when you do the leader's values assessment, for example, you value yourself, you identify your personal values, And then you you get your assessors to also do the values assessment, and what you want to see is as many matches as possible. So let's say, for example, you put down a value that's important to you, such as respect. But if none of your assessors identified the behavior of respect, or they don't see it or feel it, then there's an issue, isn't there? So that you really want to make sure that there's a great deal of personal alignment in the values that you believe you're exhibiting and the behaviors. Right? The next thing is around values alignment between the organization and your personal values. Because if there isn't that alignment there, then there's going to be some retention issues, right? And there's going to be sort of misalignment, which is going to cause engagement problems. So values alignment between the personal, the individual, and the organization needs to take place. There's actually an example of the firms of endearment, and when they bring on new trainees, after the training program, they will actually pay people to leave the training and to leave the organization whose values do not align with the organizational values, because that person will have more of a negative impact on the team and they don't want them. Right? Another thing that's very important is structural alignment. So the structures and the systems in the organization need to change. Okay, there's nothing worse than people going through personal transformation programs. They come back into the organization and the systems don't change, right? So for example, if you say that collaboration is what is required, then how are those team meetings being led? How are the systems and decision making, those processes, how are they being changed to reflect a new collaborative mindset or a new integrated process in management? And then finally, mission alignment. Okay, you need to be aligned. The systems and your processes need to be aligned, and making sure that the behaviors and values. So these four things need to be in place, right? And when you have cohesion, right, when you've got that alignment, then you've got the greatest capacity for collective action, and you've got the highest level of performance within an organization. But as you can see, it's fairly complex. You've got to be thinking about multiple things at the same time, and being very clear about what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. So creating cultural capital, right? This is the call to action. Okay, if you want to transform the passion of your people and their potential into high performance, begin by assessing the culture. Okay, you want to hear from your stakeholders what really matters to them. Okay, what are values and behaviors that are important to them and that they want to see lived within the organization. And you want to shift the dialogue, right, from us to we. What's important for all of us together. Create a shared vision, right? Bring people in. If you're a leadership team, empower your staff to take part in creating that vision. Make them feel like it's their vision as well. Build a case for change. Find out what's working, what's not working. What are the changes that are required to support your new vision? And develop strategies for alignment. Okay? You want to find out what those positive values are. What are the strengths of individuals? What are the strengths of your organization? You want to find out what's reducing energy, what's causing drain, what's causing frustration and stress. And you can begin by increasing the personal mastery and awareness of others. For example, doing the strength deployment inventory, finding out what are your personal strengths, what are the strengths of your team members, finding out, where you're missing strengths in the organization. What is that entropy? What are the things that are taking that and draining the positive energy? So in conclusion, the ABCs of high-performing culture, it starts with awareness. Okay? Various tools for developing awareness. The TLEX program reduces stress so people can become more calm, more centered, more clear thinking. It shifts the values in individuals, increases team connectedness. Same thing with the strength deployment inventory. Same thing with the cultural transformation tools from Barrett Value Center. So it's all about awareness, right? Shifting your level of consciousness, opening minds, shifting mindsets. So awareness is really important. And a new level of consciousness. When you increase that awareness, what happens is there's a greater sense of belongingness. People feel more connected to each other. And with that, with stronger connectedness, with a greater sense of belongingness, people naturally feel more committed to the objectives of the organization, and they want to give back. They want to make a difference. I mean, everybody gets up and they want to feel good. They want to know that what they're going to do today will make a difference to themselves, to their family, to their place of work in society. So resources that I highly recommend, Firms of Endearment, wonderful book that describes how to increase the cultural capital, how to transform the passion and potential for profitability, but also it gives a lot of strategies for how to work with all of your different stakeholders. Building a values-driven organization is written by Richard Barrett, who is the originator and developer of the cultural transformation tools. And this is a wonderful book. Actually, there's 3 or 4 books that he's written. His last book was called Leadership Paradigm, which is all about the importance of changing the leadership consciousness in supporting cultural transformation. And then Beyond Change Management. Again, this is a wonderful book on leading change and recognizing how conscious leadership needs to change. And then different, we've got 4 different websites here. The Value Center is the cultural transformation tools and all about that. The Values Journal is where you can actually listen to videos by leaders who are leading significant transformation. Personal Strength is all about the relationship awareness and strength deployment inventory. And then you've got the TLEX program, which is the stress management program for transformational leadership for excellence. And so questions. If you are willing to share, unmute yourselves. I would like to have a dialogue. We have about 15 minutes left before the end of the webinar, and I would really like to hear back from you. What ideas resonated most with you in this webinar? So feel free to unmute yourselves and share. Voices would be greatly appreciated. Okay, we don't have any takers on that one. What excites you about creating cultural capital? How can creating cultural capital support and add value to your organization? What are your next steps to creating cultural capital? Anyways, I would like to thank you very much for taking the time to attend this webinar. We will be sending out an evaluation, and this is to help us continually improve, to know what you appreciated, and how we can make a greater difference. I'd like to thank you very much, and have a wonderful day.